Hey guys, I want to talk about finding your art style. It's something I've struggled with my whole career, trying to determine and decide what my art style is. Maybe you're confused, maybe you're not sure what to do. Let's talk about it. So, when it comes to defining your art style, you kind of gotta decide what your goals are. Now, when I was coming up as a young artist and going to school, I was told that I had to develop a style. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to stand out in a crowd, and that illustrators were hired on their style. And so you just had to run with that style, market it to death. But here, I had a problem. I have kind of an identity crisis. And I kind of think I have artistic ADD because I start a project and then quickly lose interest and try something else. Same thing is true with art styles. I gather them up and adopt them as I like them. I try them on for a while and I use them and then I abandon them and try something else. So I have never felt like I actually have a style that could be considered Patrick's style. Here's one of Patrick's style. This is my cartooning style. I love taking little characters and making them into a little cartoon-like style. But the way I do it is I use these circular eyes, which frankly I got from Calvin and Hobbes. I love the way Bill Watterson drew his characters. And I also like the way his illustrations were developed and interesting. And so I've adopted that. So you'll notice that my characters, they don't have simplified hands. They actually have more realistic hands. So somewhere in between, I like the simple eyes, but then I like detail. So that's a style. I also like to paint. I actually like traditional illustration. I like painting characters and figures and stories. And so for a time, I would work with oil and acrylic and loved painting on a canvas. But frankly, I don't have time for it as much anymore. So it's more of a leisure activity. But when I'm getting into a commission or doing something, I work digitally now. But I love painting. I love the illustration and painting style, the classic portrait artists. And so I've tried to develop those skills. I love it. I also like a digital painting style, and that can be applied to anything. I apply it to my comic book characters, my cartoon characters, other styles, and it's something I've just learned and developed in Procreate. Now I use most often. I used to use Corel Painter, I've used Clip Studio, I've used Photoshop. I've used all different kinds of digital painting tools. Now I've pretty much settled on Procreate as my favorite because it's just intuitive and easy to use. But it suits me because it has that penciling look. I like penciling. So I like to emphasize that in my color art too. Then I like gritty, rough illustration too. So I like doing more photorealistic things, but then with really visible brush strokes. I like that. This is another digital technique, which could be watercolor, could be, chalk and um, charcoal, but it's kind of my digital watercolor version that I like to do. And so I have fun with it, but it's for more realistic things. And then one of my favorites is my vector art. I love doing very detailed, stylized character art in vector. I like simplifying the colors. I like the shapes, the lines, the deliberate shapes, the deliberate silhouettes. I love it. It's one of my favorites. I also like cartoon vector art. So I have that kind of a style I play with sometimes. So I like doing that for different reasons. So when you come to comics, I have this whole library of styles that I practice. Sometimes when I'm doing black and white art, it turns out like this. Other times it turns out like this, where it's a little bit more realistic and adventurous and action oriented, depending on what you need. So as you look at this, and as I look at this, I go, I don't know that I have a style. I've just always tried to adapt to the needs of the client or the story and have worked really hard to develop skills that could allow me to adapt my style to whatever those needs are or to whatever suits my fancy. If I feel like doing this, I'm going to do it that way. And I just do it. So again, I don't have a singular portfolio that says that's my style. So I think that's actually kind of a good thing for today's world. I don't know that it's such a great idea to only have one style. I think we have to adapt to a marketplace that is full of competition, and now even more so with AI. So developing any skill, I think, is good. So if you like a style, follow it. How do you find yours? I love this. Study, steal, synthesize, good artists copy, great artists steal. Pablo Picasso. So we all steal from each other. There's nothing truly original. We all look at other artists for inspiration. Here's one of my favorites, Alphonse Mucha. I have always loved his line work. To me, it's a hybrid of that detailed, deliberate line and then that painted look. Obviously, he's a product of his time. So this is what was possible in his era with the tools available. I can't imagine what he would have done with a computer. But this is all by hand painted, hand printed. So it's beautiful for its purpose. But it became a style, and lots of artists mimic it. One of them, one of the best, is Megan Laura. I love her style. She is really cool. I love the way she does the patterns, the shapes, the stylized borders. Looks awesome. Her outlines are beautiful. Her detail and portraiture is impeccable. So she's great at it. And she borrows her inspiration from Mucha, but she turns it into something new and unique to her. And I love it. Carries on the torch. Style is found in doing. Okay. So you find your style by doing things. As Chuck Close would say, inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us show up and get to work. In other words, do it. Now, George Seurat is that artist known for pointillism, and he kind of pioneered this idea of dabbing points of paint on a canvas at a large scale so that at a distance, your mind would merge them together, that color pattern into one color spectrum, and you'd see the image. Interestingly, this helped invent printing, lithography, where you would take these individual dots and print your color. Great insight in painting. Well, I love that. I love seeing that carried forward in a modern way by someone like Chuck Close. So here are some examples of his painted work. It's cool the way he has explored over the years different ways of breaking down images into individual pixels or squares or dots or brushstrokes. And by doing that, you can still resolve the image and what you see, but at the same time, it's a little bit abstract and diffused. And I love that. I like that. This is one of my favorites. Um, I love how when you look at each individual square, they are really nonsensical little shapes and colors. But as you look at it from a distance or as you observe the entire picture, suddenly it's clear and you see, oh, it's a picture. So somehow your mind makes those relationships and merges those colors into that distinct image, even though they're very deliberately painted colors and shapes. And it's fascinating to me how that works. Would it surprise you to know that Chuck Close is a disabled artist? He lost the use of his legs. He's been confined to a wheelchair, and also he can't even use his fingers. And so he straps his brushes onto his hands and his wrist when he paints. And so that forced him to simplify his painting into a grid and into these shapes. But then what came out of it was this amazing style. So he was still able to create and explore art through his limitation, but still use that to his advantage and make that into a style. And so he found that by doing, by not giving up, by just working through the problem. Love that. Limit your design decisions. The enemy of art is the absence of limitations. Orson Welles. So what does that mean? That means artists need boundaries. They need rules. I know we have that famous phrase to break the rules, push the boundaries. Yeah, I get it. That's what artists do. But frankly, an artist without any boundaries, they lose focus and sometimes they just completely lose out. Here's an example. Will Eisner was a great comic book artist in the 40s and the 50s, inspirational to a number of comic book artists. His newspaper comic, The Spirit, was extremely popular. It was a popular radio show. It was adapted to novels and all kinds of things in his day. And so it was a big time deal. And it, is a product of its age. It's that noir, mystery, danger storytelling. But the limitation of the printing, in other words, being confined to black and white newsprint, forced Eisner to develop very distinct illustration styles to match the newsprint, and the newspaper. And that didn't hold him back. So, limited to just black and white, he still was able to create extreme drama, interesting mystery, and he played with the space. Like I've always loved, if you look at his panels in the beginning, in the first few pages, you always find spirit written into the background and his name, Will Eisner. Um, I just love the way everything kind of fits and is merged and is part of the art. Again, in this beautiful black and white form. So that limitation that held him back was actually a benefit in the long run. The same is true for modern artist Frank Miller, who, is inspired by Will Eisner. You can see it in his work Sin City. So when he was limited to just black and white and limited strokes, he could convey a lot of really interesting detail and storytelling. I mean, at first it looks like a mess or an abstract picture, but when you look at it, you see the extreme anger on the face and the guy's fist, and then him jumping through the window and the flash of the gunfire. I mean, really dramatic, but again, so beautiful that it's done in just black and white. So that limitation really helped Frank Miller. On the other hand, if you look at some of his more recent work, especially in the second Dark Knight, the follow-up to the Dark Knight, oh, it's terrible. So it like went too far. So without limitations and being told do what you want, didn't work for Frank Miller in that sense. Next thing you want to do with your style is connect it to the story. Here's a basic quote. A special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing. Yep. Sounds like George Lucas. He'd say something very matter of fact and kind of ordinary, right? So here you have him essentially saying that special effect, however amazing it is, if it doesn't tell a story, it's kind of useless. So I'm going to pick on abstract painter Jackson Pollock for a second. Very interesting, unique style, groundbreaking way to approach a canvas, um, drizzling paint in a chaotic way. He was famous for doing this unique style, developing this crazy approach to art, which frankly, what does it say? It's just chaotic. Well, what happens on the other hand if an illustrator like Norman Rockwell comes along and duplicates Pollock's style while at the same time illustrating a story around it? Connecting your style to a story is what connects with an audience. And so to me, that's an important part of illustration. So here we see Norman Rockwell telling a story while using Jackson Pollock's style, which I think is ironic and funny. Curate a style board. Here's something from Tim Ferriss. Other people's ideas are often better than our own. Find people who challenge and inspire you, spend time with them, and it will change your life. And so I would adapt that to say, find artists that challenge your ideas and inspire you. Spend time with their art, and it will change your art. So, how do I do it? I'm like that stay-at-home mom. I've got my Pinterest page. I collect all these images and things that I think are cool, whether it's fashion or interior design or art and cartooning. I collect those ideas. I look at them and they inspire me and they give me ideas. I also am a sucker for books. So I have more books than I can read. And whenever I find an artist I like and I'm interested in, I get their book and I devour it and I look at it. And having it on the shelf nearby makes me feel comfortable. And I don't know, in some way I've absorbed that information and I love it. Collect your own library. Art is a journey. Life is a journey, not a destination, as Ralph Waldo Emerson says, and so is your art. Art is not a destination, it's a journey, it's a process. So that means allow yourself the grace to develop over time. Don't expect yourself to be perfect and the best right now. Let it evolve and let it develop. You know, Bilbo's story was fun because it was an adventure. It wasn't his destination, but it was a there and back again story that evolved over time. Here's Alan Lee. I love that when they were conceiving the original Lord of the Rings, they went to illustrators that had illustrated the novels, and Alan Lee was one of them. And they hired him to make drawings and concept art to develop the look and feel of the creatures and the landscapes and the architecture and the characters and the costumes. And they spent times allowing him to draw, and he made thousands of drawings with pencil and paper, conceiving and designing how the characters would look and how the movie would feel. And I really believe that by using him and going back to that original artist, that's what really inspired the look and feel of the film. And it allowed other artists to basically absorb that style and carry it on into their craft, whether it was, sewing the costumes or forging the metal for the swords or making the the models for the shots. All of that, I think, can trace its heritage back to the original penciler, Alan Lee. So, those are my thoughts on finding an artistic style. Spend time with the best art, and then practice, practice, practice. You will find inspiration in the doing. Good luck. Hope to see what you do. Connect with me online.